You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number, and an engineer will be right with you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of Data Center Therapy. I'm your host, Matt Automate, but I've only got one car, Yeti, and alongside me is my co-host, Matt Grep Everything Cozzolino. In each episode, we dive into the wide range of technologies that make up this beautiful sandbox called IT that we all play in. We share our hopes and dreams, opinions both positive and critical alike, all with a touch of empathy, because at the end of the day, we all need a seat on that couch. Now, we are yet again in a giving mood, and what better gift is there out there than a podcast with our own Alec Taylor.
Good
Alec,
morning,
how are
Mr.
you?
Taylor.
I'm doing all right, guys. Matt and Matt, good morning.
It's great to see your wavelengths once again gracing our digital sound meters.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. So, Alec, this is your. We're still definitely in single digits. I think one hand, in terms of your appearances on here, and we want that number to go up. So everyone is special. So today we're here to talk about some workshops that Alec's been up to lately, and whereas we're not going to necessarily go through the syllabus bit by bit, we want to talk about what you've been up to. And lately it sounds like network automation for busy people is the headliner. Is that right?
That is indeed correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. So, Kazo, have you been you've been a part of one of these workshops up to this point, right?
I sat through a couple of them. I sat through the security one, the ISO 2700. I went through that one, and there was even for me, there was a whole lot of data in there, a whole lot of content in there that I wasn't quite aware of. So
I'm guessing if anybody can make standards and compliance entertaining and interesting, it's got to be Alec, right?
Totally.
Alec, give us a dad joke one-liner for ISO 27K.
Oh my gosh, a dad joke. Wow, a dad joke for ISO
very specific there, right?
27001. I love ISO 27K. I love dad jokes. I might need a minute to stew on that one though.
Okay.
I like that. That's a great.
That's okay.
We should do a podcast just about dad jokes for people who work in IT. That could be the one.
Well, at that point, you rename this to the Alec Taylor Show, most definitely.
I don't know if we'd ever be able to beat that one. That would be the topic to have, right? Eye rollers with.
Sometimes
with
I can hear that when I do my dad jokes. I can hear the eye rolls out of the girlfriend.
Oh boy.
Well, so we think about automation, and Kazo and I have talked about it a ton so far on these episodes, and up to this point, it's always focused on the system side of things, what you would call the system side. Deploying virtual machines, deploying labs, automating processes, leveraging Terraform for this is the state that I want, and I want you to automatically make sure we're in compliance with that. But we haven't talked about it with networking as a context, and I got to be honest, the thought of it makes me nervous. It's almost like networking, if it's not broke, don't touch it, don't mess with it, or things can go very badly very quickly. So why are we interested in network automation?
Well, that is a very, very good question. So, I think there's a few compelling reasons why automation on the networking side makes sense. One of them is, we're outnumbered by networking devices, and we have to do things to them. And of course, the bigger the environment, the larger the argument for automating. But what if we could automate software updates? So let's just say we have an environment with lots of Cisco routers and switches. And it comes time to, maybe we want to start by inventorying what iOS or NXOS releases that we're running. How easy is that the manual way? It's not easy, it's not fun. What if I had...
Time-consuming.
Yes, it's time-consuming. What if I had a platform that I could use to query the operating system version on all of those devices, and depending on what operating system version the device was running, I could automate the upgrade of iOS or NXOS on that device, And if I ran into any problems with the upgrade, I could have that same automation platform automatically revert the version back. Or if I needed
And I
to,
guess in the past that would be a homegrown script that would
yeah,
telnet or SSH into the router, spit and kick out the version command, and then
right.
pull it back to you. I'm guessing in the old ways of doing things.
Well, yeah, iOS has been around since 1987. An interesting bit of nerd trivia: iOS as a name has been around for so long that Apple actually licenses that name from Cisco. So,
There you
Right.
go.
yes, actually licenses that. I wonder what that. I don't know what that makes them every year, but probably a nice little chunk of change. But imagine, we've got 33 years worth of configuration updates and saving configurations and software updates and
And
yep.
and one of those things too, where maybe the automation shines a little bit more of a light on the software updates. How many switches have you managed in your career where, oh, I haven't logged into that thing in probably
Hmm.
4 years?
Yeah,
Certainly
It's
less frequently to
yeah, it's
update its software or
right,
know what it's still running. Does that vulnerability apply?
correct. Do I have Telnet enabled on some of these devices? Do I have
Right.
TACACS if I'm using centralized TACACS plus authentication? Is it
Like
configured
when
on
if
all
the
of my
last time
devices? Yeah.
if the last time you logged into it was leveraging Procom Plus, you probably
Oh,
need to upgrade it.
oh, oh, gonna date ourselves. There would be another great podcast episode, Forgotten Technologies that we used to use. Remember when we used to use? I remember when you had to pay for SSH.
Yikes.
Really?
Yes.
Who would you pay?
There was a Finnish company that came up with. We paid for the client server application um, for Unix back when I was
Wow.
working for a large mobile telecommunications company, and yeah, there was not a free version. There was only a pay for, and it was very, very expensive.
Of course it
Interesting.
was.
Yes, indeed. So I remember sitting in a meeting having a detailed discussion with a group of people about why did we even need SSH since Telnet worked so well. Yes, that actually happened. So, at any rate, but yeah, imagine um, making a configuration change. We want to put a security banner. Maybe we're going through ISO 27001 certification, and we've decided that we need to secure, all 117 or 509 networking devices that we own. Who wants to log into all of those devices to push out a new login banner or to make a config change for security reasons or to enable SNMP? There's all kinds of things that we need to validate, verify, inventory, and possibly change, even just a small one, and that becomes profoundly painful if we're going to do it the old way where we, dump a config file into a text editor, make our config changes, log into the device, copy paste. Or even
So
if we
there's
were, yeah, it's just it's not fun. It's error prone, super time consuming, and a an automation framework would give us the ability to do things that mundane tasks, or some very complicated tasks.
So it sounds like consistency because
Hmm.
there's that old joke of like data centers wouldn't have any issues if there wasn't people in them, right?
Yes,
Users.
So
users
so
are the problem. Yes,
when you've
still.
got this config and you need X number of them, it's way more consistent to be able to push that out and say loop this 20 times and apply these all the same, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, that is true. Absolutely, that is true.
So scanning some of these things that we go over here, outside of something like the message of the day banner, code revisions, what other kind of things do you see that network administrators and engineers saving time on when it comes to not just dropping into a switch and changing it? Is it? I'm guessing VLANs is probably another one of them.
Hmm. Centralizing the configuration management of your devices with an automation platform will save us time. I mean, one, we don't have to go do something 307 times. We know that we're going to run the same command or make the same configuration change accurately every single time. We can schedule automation tasks so we don't even have to be, at work, logged in and awake to do certain tasks.
It's kind of
Right?
terrifying all at the
Kind
same
of
time.
kind of terrifying. Yeah, I don't know about large scale changes, but certainly doing, inventorying something, or making, changes that wouldn't necessarily affect the functionality of a device. You could certainly do without being present. I mean, the really nice thing is we have the ability to roll back. So even if we were, logged in interactively, we were VPN'd in, or we had a remote desktop session and we were doing things in our environment, if we did run into an issue or an error, we could completely revert the change back or selectively revert the change back. So,
Talk about an argument for out of band management.
yes,
Truly out of band.
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, indeed. And so,
I mean, Kazo and I, in our data center, we've got a couple of Meraki firewall devices, and it's merely anecdotal, but we get the emails, and I do not love the email that comes about a month ahead of time saying, "Hey, we're going to update your firewalls at 3 a.m. This morning, this morning of whatever coming
yeah,
up in a few weeks." Don't love that idea. And all you can do is kick the can down the road until you finally just bite the bullet.
mm-hmm.
And to this point, knock on wood, it's been great.
They actually have, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And they do it at like we set the preference on the
Yeah, I think it's like
frame
3
we want.
a.m. or something.
3
we've got it
a.m.,
set
which
for,
even on the East Coast is still quite early. So.
Yeah, indeed. Well,
yeah. So let me ask you this, and I don't mean to pick on any of our partners or any specific vendors, but is this a case of there's just a better way of doing automation, leveraging different sets of tools, or do the manufacturer? Let's pick on Cisco. Doesn't Cisco have a management platform for their portfolio where this stuff could have been done, or have they kind of been lax in consolidating all the different platforms?
well, they have some point tools for doing centralized configuration management. Um, but when we talk with people about automation, it is certainly a best practice to keep the number of platforms that we need to support to a bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not solve an automation issue with Windows, VMware, our networking platform, right? Let's not go with 6 automation engines for 6 different platforms. Let's try to use one, and preferably one that we don't have to pay extra for. Let's not use something that's proprietary. And we're also thinking about longevity. So when we pick a platform, we are making a tacit decision that that platform is going to be around for some time. So I would also look at maturity of that automation platform, right? Has it been around long enough? Are there enough people using it? People excited about it to think that in 5 years it's going to be around, so I don't have to replace it? That would be a concern that I would have for sure, right? Is cost, complexity, sameness, and longevity. So in this workshop that we're doing around network automation for busy people, we are talking about Python, why Python is used for automating all kinds of things, not just network devices. Uh, and ultimately, we're discussing Ansible, which is a Python-powered automation engine that's owned by Red Hat now, but it and its management framework. If you are not interested in, getting support for it, then you can use it at no charge.
So, would you draw a difference between the language and um, the tool that you're using? So, like Python at its core is really just a scripting language, and
Mm-hmm.
I can run that on my laptop. I can write a
Yeah.
script. But there's something else to be said. Same with Ansible, right? There's something else to be said to have that centralized tool that you can log in and tell to schedule these jobs and check in
Right.
these playbooks and stuff. That's kind of, is that what you see as more of the important management overhead, or
The engine is what you're asking about, Kaz?
yeah, the engine versus the actual language, right?
Yeah, I think if we kind of break down what the role Python has, uh, in an Ansible world um, is for anyone who wants to master Ansible. And again, there's a lot of great reasons why. Certainly, we're talking about automating network devices, firewalls, etc. But we're really talking about just about darn anything. Linux operating system, you name it. There are frameworks and modules for Ansible that are written in Python. So for anyone who really wants to get under the covers with Ansible and understand how to customize it and extend it, it's really important to understand Python. Now, for many people, they have little to no Python knowledge, and they just stay within the standardized framework of Ansible, which will require an understanding of YAML, yet another markup language, which is what things like the playbooks are written in. Not hard to learn or understand how that data typing works. Again, it's just a format for putting configuration information into a file.
Spaces, not tabs.
Indeed that Ansible will that Ansible will parse, and then we have the Ansible engine that performs all of this work, and we have the Ansible tower um, that will perform um, all the management and the scheduling and things like that. So in the workshop, we're going to show off why these parts matter, why Python is important, what the Ansible playbook format looks like, how this YAML thing works. There are lots and lots and lots of examples, thousands of examples of pre-written playbooks that with some minor modifications are all ready to go. Our attendees are not going to be the first people to ever upgrade iOS on a router. They will not be the first people to make a update to a route table on a switch. So all of these things have been written before. So in addition to this powerful framework, there's also a massive community of code that people will write and give away at no cost that folks can leverage to get most of the way there with an automation initiative for their network environment, and they don't have to write a bunch of code from scratch. And we're going to show all those things off in the workshop.
Man, I like it. So let me take a step back for those who might not be familiar. Ivoxy's history is really deeply rooted in education and training and kind of being on that or attempting to be on the edge of where the industry is headed. And I believe Alec, that Ivoxy Consulting started as strictly a consulting on VMware-based technology where we didn't really sell a product. We sold knowledge on how to use that product. Is that right?
That is correct. You got it.
Okay, so with that training, with me calling it training or slash education, how does a workshop fit in? How is it different than what a traditional training class would look like?
That is a very good question. So, in a training class, it spans multiple days. We have had training classes that have been just one day long, but usually they're 2, 3, or sometimes 4 days. And used to be that we would get together in a room. Now we're doing our classes virtually with the.
Yeah, that's a distant memory.
Yep, right. Um, and so folks have labs that they go through on their own, detailed build outs, lots of theory, so lots of content, and interactive labs that folks go through. Now, some folks don't necessarily, they want to learn more about a topic than just kind of talking about it, but maybe it isn't appropriate that they go through a 2, 3, or 4 day long course to learn about why a technology is important, getting to see how it works, asking some questions about it, and maybe deciding if it is a path that they care to take. So simply talking about it is not enough. Having to go through a course is sometimes more than where people want to start. So in a workshop, we drastically condense down the content into typically the 3-hour format, and then rather than our attendees going through labs and configuring and building things out, we have environments that are already configured that we walk people through so they can see remotely, here is how this works. This is how this automation platform works. This is how we would build one of these things. Here's how we would schedule an automation event. Here is what the output looks like. Here's how we would revert a configuration change. right? So they can see it in use. They can ask questions about it. Somebody wants to see a specific scenario. Hey, let's show you that scenario. Boom, boom, boom. Here you go. So
Is it in is it important to have some sort of understanding of programming and scripting and
no.
loops and if statements going into this? No, it isn't.
I mean, it always helps, but
Right.
it is not necessary.
Okay.
It feels like a lot of the technologies, YAML, it obfuscates the actual programming structure. That being said, my assessment, and that being said, YAML alone is something where the markup language is not particularly interesting. Once you
Yeah.
get the format down, you're done with that. But it's a matter of how does, like, for example, Ansible. Kazo, you and I have had this talk. When
Mm-hmm.
I've leveraged Ansible to deploy Room Assistant to my 5 Pi 0 Ws or whatever, and I'm like, okay, this is great. It says version, and I can put a version number or put latest or whatever. But where in the actual playbook is it looking for that value, or what are the other parameters I could potentially put in this YAML file that is a valid? And that's where I'm guessing where Alec was talking about. If you crack open the actual playbook or libraries in Python, you can see you
The
can
actual
add
code underneath it.
additional parameters that you might look for, and then inject that into whatever platform you're working with. I'm guessing that.
Yeah, that is the
And
case. And
yeah.
because Ansible has been around for so long, and there is such a massive community of folks that use it, and this is something you can use for on-prem devices. This is kind of how the cloud is getting deployed in so many different places, either by the cloud providers themselves or by the end users. There is so much code already written that it is feasible that with a handful of modifications, just some site-specific or customer-specific configuration changes, someone has got a management framework pretty much ready to go right from jump, without really even having to learn how YAML works. Right,
Well,
here are the
it's
pieces we could pull down. NetApp makes them, Cisco makes them, VMware makes them.
Here's your
You know,
plugins, right?
yeah, here you go. And with
And
very
get the
very
data anywhere.
shallow learning curve, you can have an automation framework up and
I'm
running and
glad
ready
to
to
see
go.
the industry kind of coalesce around something. And when I say the industry, I mean automation. I feel like there are so many myriad platforms that, look at your Venn diagram. They overlap mostly. A
Hmm.
lot of a lot of them overlap mostly. Some of them overlap slightly, but there's 16 different tools, and maybe the subset of things that you need to do your job cover three of those. Three of those tools cover all of those tasks. So that's great. How about one tool, or as few tools as possible? And I feel like if you were really out in front of this 5 years ago, that you may have rebuilt your environment several times and create a lot of tech debt for yourself by researching and investing in time into technologies that have kind of been pushed aside due to immaturity or just, oh, now we're hopping on the hot new thing. It feels like we're maybe not approaching a point of true maturity, but it sounds like we're approaching kind of a critical mass where it's safe to commit yourself to focusing on Ansible and some automation engines without the fear of, oh, the new hotness is out tomorrow. That guy is no longer cool.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what I feel.
There's
yeah,
there's a lot of
Fear.
investment into learning
That's
those though too, right?
that's what I do. I fear that, and everything's a learning opportunity, but I fear spending significant time on something that's just going to fall by the wayside next week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But
And
it sounds like Ansible is definitely safe, and I mean, I would agree with that.
it is as safe as it gets. Right? We do not have a time machine. It would be wonderful if we did, or maybe
Do
profoundly
do we
frightening.
know if we do?
Power, yeah, very frightening. Um,
Come with me if you want to live.
exactly. Get to the Jabba. Right. So we don't, but Ansible has been around. I think this is its 8th year. So
Yeah.
2012 is when we first saw Ansible roll onto the scene, and it is massively, massively popular. And now that we have Red Hat and their funding and their vision behind that, it is not going anywhere anytime soon. So there certainly could be a profoundly fantastic replacement for it. What it would be, I don't know. There doesn't seem to be any grumblings or rumblings that there's an issue with Ansible and it needs to be replaced, or that anyone is working on such a thing. Certainly,
Yeah.
Ansible is not our only choice, but it checks all of the boxes for maturity and openness and support and applicability and ease of use. And it can be used for such a wide variety of tasks, not just networking, that it really could be your one true automation platform, for the on-prem and the cloud data center.
Is is leveraging Ansible and playbooks? Are we talking CLI only, or are there? Let's say I've got a team and I don't really want them diving into the command line or possibly fat fingering or whatever. Is there a Are there tools that let me kind of publish this to an intranet or something that my fellow IT administrators could leverage certain routines or automated workflows?
Yeah, so when we talk about the open source flavor, um, and that's, we'll largely be focusing on what you can do with the free Ansible bits out there. Is there is a graphical uh, user interface that's called Ansible Tower in the pay for version and AWX in the free version. Um, so Red Hat takes certain versions of AWX and tweaks them and tunes them and does some massaging to them to create Ansible Tower. So if someone does not want to do command line things, and certainly you can if you want to, we need a scheduling engine, and so that's the Ansible engine piece. And then having a management framework that has a web user interface, and we can collaborate and monitor, get alerts on jobs and things like that. That is what AWX is, and we will be talking about AWX and showing that off in detail during the workshop. Um, so no, if you like to do command line things, knock yourself out. But really, for group collaboration and just lowering the bar for getting people on board with using an enterprise automation platform, really the secret sauce is AWX, or again in the commercial version, Tower.
Does that also give you the workflow piece where
Yes.
you can make the request and have your boss or whomever authorize that or approve that? I
Yep.
want to spin up 20 VMs. Someone has to say yes, right? Yeah. Okay.
Indeed.
Cool.
Yes. 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 So there's a lot that AWX can do. I wish in my heart of hearts that it was called the same name, because sometimes folks get confused. AWX or Tower? Well, if you're paying for it from Red Hat, it is Tower. If you are not, it is AWX. Um, and of course, Red Hat would love to see everyone using the Tower version in production environments because of its supportability and the thoroughness with which it's tested. But that's not a must do. But yeah, there's all the governance pieces in there, the workflow pieces in there. Uh, folks can see your library of playbooks, right, which are the YAML code bits that do the things, history of events, how long tasks took, fire off, a playbook govern who can do what as well, so that someone who has access to this automation engine doesn't necessarily have the ability to do everything, but just certain things that they're entitled to. So role based authentication and Active Directory authentication integration, all of those things are managed by AWX/Tower. And then the thing that does the work is the Ansible engine. So that's the brains behind all of the wonderful user interfaces and whatnot.
Any chance that something like this garners enough interest where we could even potentially go deeper in the future and actually do a traditional education training class where we go dive deep and set up labs for everybody?
Yeah, that is the plan. So the plan is that this is a kind of a warm up or a precursor to a class that, who knows, might be taught by one of the Matts on our podcast today. Who
M2.
knows, right? Because I think I heard Cosolino volunteer. I think I just heard him say, "I would love to build that class."
Oh,
I heard
And
that.
right after I do my NSX class.
right, exactly, right behind the other 9 classes I could do.
Right.
Put it on the stack.
But that's what's fun about what we do in technology is it's not doesn't stay the same. Right? It's always changing. There's new things to do that are interesting, and a huge part of our business and a foundational component to why we started Ivoxy and why we have consultants like yourselves is people want to learn. They want to learn from people who understand this technology. They know how to be successful. That have implemented it in other places. Tell me what I need to know. This is exciting. I get it. I want to simplify and
I have
standardize
found
things. Help me understand.
the automation stuff to be maybe it's a poor analogy, but a rip off the Band-Aid moment. Only because if you're set in your ways of management and how you handle your infrastructure, automation almost requires you in most cases to you're doing this a different way now,
Mm-hmm.
and you just have to be okay with that. And I have drip drip drip. I have not ripped off the Band-Aid. I'm pulling it slowly, and ouch, I am a hairy Polish French guy.
You hear about it all the time.
Matt, even just hearing you over the inner tubes, you sound like a
Yeah.
hairy Polish French guy.
I imagine you can almost hear how big my nose is. Yes. Yep.
Yes.
But it's one of those things that I Casalino has talked me into it a little bit. He's worn away at me like erosion on the side of a cliff face. I am more and more putting automation into my home lab, and I'm not going to say containers are my thing just yet, Caso. Sorry, I'm not there yet. But automation, absolutely, I'm on board with. Whether that's Terraform, Ansible, it is creeping in, and I'm liking it.
There's some growth you have to go through when you try to retrofit that too, because we talk about standardization and it'll highlight where you don't have things that are standardized and potentially break stuff. That's
For a self-loathing guy, I'd love to have a mirror held up and said, "This is where you've gone wrong." It's great. Alec, well, as we wrap up, is there anything else? I mean, what else have you been up to, man? It's really a pleasure to have you on, and I hate that we kind of have to try to cap these things at a certain amount of time because I can go on and on with
Right, of course. I think the takeaways are we have fantastic workshops like this one and others that we put on, and we had a lot of success with our VDI workshop. So thank you to all of those out there in podcast land that attended. Um, we have a sign up link that folks can sign up for various workshops where we'll let you know when a workshop is up and coming and solicit some input from you on what type of topics are interesting, including a write-in. So for anyone out there that feels that there's something that should be, that's relevant to them or they're thinking about doing that we might be able to help with, let us know, and we could potentially turn that into a podcast where we talk about it, or a workshop where we show folks interactively how a technology works, or dive into a technical topic. So we'll make sure that folks get that link and can sign up for our workshops. I think we've been doing that with all of our podcasts. And let us know what's on your minds, and we might turn that into a future workshop. So yeah, appreciate both
and
of you
it's
guys.
it's important to note that even though this is network automation for busy people, and the workshops are geared. This workshop is geared towards the network folk.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody in IT is more than welcome to join in. And even though I myself am not focused solely on networking, it's a topic that I would be very interested in, and it certainly can glean some good practices and learn about Ansible, more about Python, how you leverage the tool set essentially.
Yeah.
And like you said, the link is in the show notes for signing up for those workshop notifications. But if you're just listening here, it is ivoxy.com/virtual-workshops is the URL as well. Well, Alec, thank you again for joining us, my friend.
Thank you guys. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so goes another episode of Data Center Therapy. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Subscribe to us on all the major podcast platforms. Apparently, last time, our producer, Dustin Shadow, and marketing director shared with me that I apparently said, find us on Instagram, and he says, we don't, unless you're running a rogue account, I've actually doesn't have an Instagram. So I'll tell you one thing. That's sad because I've got some great food. My food pick game is out of this world. But if we ever do that, we'll do, Ivoxy
Do a nice
cooking.
spaghetti on top of that server. And
Right.
Yeah.
Look at that meatball, right?
there you go.
Thanks again for listening to Data Center Therapy, everybody. Have a great day.